Hearing me?
All right,
Yeah,
I
Mary Beth, you're going to have to pop out.
All right, I can't.
Okay. All right, well, she'll pop back in. Sometimes that happens, the joys of technology. We have any celebrations to share this evening? It
I'm
can
sorry,
be anything.
I don't have editing rights. I was trying to type in who's here.
Well, give me just 1 second and I will fix that.
Okay, thank you. And then I had to jump off because you guys couldn't hear me.
Yeah, we could hear you. You couldn't hear us. All right, Miss Mary Beth, you should have editing rights now. Thank you. And we should be recorded and underway. So back to celebrations. Anything that we are celebrating this evening? Jennifer sharing one in the chat box. Amazing attendance in our ESL classes, and it's only Tuesday. That's wonderful, especially in between a week of break and then heading towards another break. I'm really happy to hear that. Other celebrations? Unmute and share or put them in the chat box.
I'm sorry, Natalie, I still can't type in the document.
You might need to refresh it.
Okay, I'll do that. And then I celebrate that I'm back.
Yay, Mary Beth.
And my kids look pretty good. We did our iStation and I got 100% participation today. So that's huge for me.
That's really exciting. And that leads into something I want to celebrate. This is the first time since, probably the beginning of October that I don't have a teacher out on leave. So that's a big deal. So that was definitely one of the challenges, being in person right before break. But anyway, so that's a victory. Other celebrations?
Vaccines, yay!
Yes, let's get them prioritized and make sure we have enough for all of us. Yes, but that's a good one.
I was also doing iStation, and parents did really good. No helping students. Letting them to do. They were by them, but they were not helping anything. So it was really good to see, because I told them, this is a school test. Nobody can help them. They have to do their best, and that's it. And they were really good doing that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's exciting. And then she just dropped out of the meeting, but that's been, I know, something that the primary team has talked about is ways to get information remotely to make sure it's truly reflective of what the students are capable of doing, rather than what they're doing with support from folks at home. So that's exciting. I see Joan put a celebration in the chat box saying that her daughter's still talking to her because she disconnected their internet service in the middle of a job interview. So I'm glad to hear that you and your daughter are still talking. I hope things go well with the job interview. And I see Brooke joined in the call too. Welcome, Brooke. She was here. There she is at the bottom. Any other celebrations before we jump into our agenda? Go ahead, Jennifer.
Well, I just wanted to say, on a lighter note, about parent involvement, I can tell the parents who are really crafty and really want their own art classes, because they do sit right next to their student and help them through the whole art project. So it's pretty funny.
That's exciting. Yeah, they're looking for additional ways to get some recreation ideas perhaps at home. So that's exciting. Any other celebrations before we move on? Right then, the first topic on our agenda are 100% virtual and in-person updates. So I don't know that I have a lot to share, but what I will share probably is important. DPS is going to be announcing later this evening, both to staff and then to families, that the beginning of the second semester is going to start remotely. DPS's approach right now is that they are working with a coalition of metro area school districts to make decisions with the information they're receiving from Denver Health and other health partners. in regard to both elementary and secondary schools. And DPS will be sharing this timeline this evening. So right now, and this is all pending changes in health conditions and what happens with COVID numbers over the next few weeks. But as of this time, that first week back in January is going to continue to be fully remote for all DPS children. Then on January 11th, that's the target date for all elementary students, ECE through 5. In Denison's case, that would be ECE through 6, to return to school. So if students have selected in person, that would be the earliest opportunity at this time for children to return to in-person classes, while families enrolled in our 100% virtual option will remain in that virtual option. Then, if the numbers allow, DPS will be phasing in secondary students starting, I have to look at my, I don't remember those dates as much since we're not a secondary school, so I gotta look at my notes for that. January 19th is when they are targeting a gradual return to in-person learning for the first time this school year for secondary students. So, and then they will phase in with the goal of all students who selected in-person learning returning to campuses by February 1st. That being said, all of that is completely dependent on what happens with COVID. But that is the timeline they're going to be releasing later this evening. So, Maggie, I saw your hand up. Oh, but she disappeared. So she'll come back and then she'll ask her question. Any other questions about that information while we're waiting for Maggie to rejoin? Hannah, that's a great question. That's one of the topics that we're actually going to be discussing at SLT tomorrow night. I have had questions, and that was, let me pause on that for a second and go back to Maggie's question since she's back. Maggie, what was your question?
Sorry, I think like 8 million hours on this. I could figure out the buttons by now. I was just curious, is this based on the number of COVID positive tests that we have right now? Because that's concerning to me.
I can't tell you specifically exactly which metrics DPS is using, whether it's purely percent positivity, whether it's a combination of trends in case numbers and percent positivity. I don't know that. I do know that they said they are going to continue to watch the numbers to see if it's determined to be safe at this timeline. And if not, they'll push it back.
So, but as of right now, they feel that it's safe to have us go back if the numbers are where they are now?
I think what they are hoping is that the trend in Denver County, at least, has been that the percent of cases has decreased. And so they're hoping that that would lead to a decrease in percent positive. Okay. But as we all know, the Thanksgiving numbers haven't fully hit yet. And we know that there are going to be winter holiday numbers, perhaps. And so I think they're just trying to give families and staff a timeline to anticipate, knowing, the big caveat is that this is all completely dependent on health conditions.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no other questions about that, I'm going to go back to what Hannah asked. Hannah was asking, if there's going to be shifting with the first graders to their original first grade teacher and such. And so tomorrow our school leadership team meets and we're going to have a conversation around this. I have had some conversations with a few parents after Thanksgiving break asking about, would my child return to their originally scheduled teacher, or would they stay with their current placement? And I said, right now, we're not going to make any changes for the rest of the semester. And just really trying to give children stability, and instead of this back and forth and not knowing right now, we're going to plan for a return to in-person learning on January 11th. Don't know how realistic that return is. And so I don't want to return kids to their teacher for a week and then go back a week, so there are a lot of pieces to consider, and SLT is going to make a determination on that tomorrow, and then we'll share that with the community. When I met with, I'd have to go back and rewatch my recording, but I'm pretty certain that when I had the question and answer session with families earlier this year, I said we were going to leave things. Once we got to a place where we could leave kids in one place, we were going to do that as best as we could and try to minimize the shifting back and forth. It's just been, especially our youngest children, our kindergartners have weathered a lot of transition in all of this with the staggered return to in-person learning. And our first graders too, not quite as much as our kinders, but it's just really hard. And then it's hard on the teachers, to have a child with them for a little bit and then not with them for a little bit and then back with them for a little bit. It's hard to get that continuity that's needed to really promote children's growth. So we're going to work on that one. And that was the second part of my virtual and in-person update. I wanted to talk about just class lists from rosters. And then the third part I wanted just to give an update on was that the window for families to change their learning option was open for elementary schools. It officially closed Sunday evening, but we were still completing some with families yesterday, and that's fine. We only had about 10 families choose to change their learning option, and it was really just about half and half. 5 families who were virtual wanted to be in person when it became available, and about 5 wanted to go the other direction. They had chosen in person and they wanted just to stay remote. So it wasn't a very large percentage of our overall community. And like I said, it was fairly well. So it might have been 6 for one and 4 for the other. I just can't remember off the top of my head where it finally landed. So there won't be too many shifts, and several of, I think 3 or 4, I don't remember, were upper elementary students. And because of the way that that's being staffed, there won't be any change of teacher because the upper elementary teachers are live streaming to virtual students. So any questions or anything else around virtual or in person that I haven't addressed that you guys would like to ask questions about? Go ahead, Maria.
Natalie, those children who are virtual but they are moving to in person, are they back to their classrooms, or how is that gonna happen with them? Because, for example, I am full with kindergarten students.
Yeah.
So if one of my students is coming back in person, is the student going to a different classroom, or I don't know?
And that's a good question. And that was one of the caveats in all of this, was space permitting, that we could accommodate these changes. And so we'll be talking about this at SLT tomorrow night, and then reaching out to teachers individually before any final placements are made. So I do remember, Maria, I can tell you this, and you and I can talk about this more tomorrow. One of your children chose to move to virtual, and one of your children who was virtual wants to come back to in-person. Okay, so we can talk. So now I see another stuff in the chat box, so let me just check that real quick. Yeah, the change is just, it is very complicated. And it's even, it impacts the specials classes, because they'll see a student with one group of children one day, and then maybe 2 weeks later, if they've had to quarantine, maybe in a different classroom, you're like, wait, why are you here instead of with the class you originally assigned? Thank you for your input, Cole. I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's kind of where I feel. So I'm happy to have this input from you guys to consider with SLT tomorrow. But just trying to, any stability we can provide in this chaotic year, I think is really important. I agree. All right, Mary Beth, I love the color you've chosen. Thank you. It's like bubble gum. It looks really good. let's move on. If you guys think of questions around virtual in person, we can ask more at the end, but I want to move on to the school determined funds piece because that may generate more questions. So I've linked a couple of documents within the agenda. The first is an initial report. Let me just give you a little bit of background of what the school determined funds are. So as a result of Denver taxpayers approving the 2 ballot measures that were on the city ballot, Denison is slated not only to receive some type of cooling system, which I haven't heard anything about that yet, but we were also one of 21 schools for this first round that was identified to receive what DPS is calling school determined funds. And school determined funds are to improve the quality of learning environments within a school. So Denison will be receiving around $100,000 to make some improvements to our school. And so if you open that SDF initial report, and hopefully I have the share settings so that you guys can all see it. There it is. If not, I can share my screen. But I thought it might be easier if folks can just kind of look at this on their own. Some individuals are listed on the top of this document. Michael McDonald and Alan, I'm not sure how you say his last name. Was there a question?
Is the $100,000 in addition to the cooling?
Yes, it's separate. It's a completely separate pot of money. So these 2 gentlemen that are listed on the top of the, oh, thank you. It was emailed, Brooke, but I dropped it in earlier. Hold on just a second. I'll drop the link back in again. Anyway, these 2 gentlemen came to Denison and they did a walkthrough of the school with Enrique. And so they were looking at particular areas in the school. And so then each of the areas was given a rating. And they looked at the overall condition of the areas, the space flow, the flooring, paint, ceiling, quality, furniture, technology, specialty equipment, and then any comments. And they gave each of these areas for each space, they evaluated a rating, either green, yellow, or red. And so I'll give you all just a minute to kind of look over this document, but feel free to ask questions as you're reviewing it.
Natalie, are we looking at the scope and pricing document?
No, let's look at the SDF bar sample, the top one listed in the agenda. And then the scope and price, I mean, you can look at that one too, but the scope and pricing will make more sense if you've looked at the SDF bar sample first. Are you guys able to, that's the one I'm a little worried about you guys being able to see. Thomas, that document is linked in the agenda. If I can share that link though separately too. Let me get that. Okay. Are you guys able to get into this? This one is a little bit different and I don't see you guys showing up in there, but the way your faces look on the screen, it looks like you guys are studying a document. So, okay.
It's really hard. Mine just keeps loading. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say about that. I had a really hard time. She shared this as a PDF, and rather than just giving me the link to the original document. And so I struggled to get it into this format to share. Let me do this. I'm going to email you, Mary Beth, while folks are looking at this. Does anyone else need a PDF version of it sent to email while I'm got that open?
So the colors, Natalie, the colors are above that go for that section. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Okay. And red means obviously not so good.
Yes.
Okay.
Green would be, I think it says at the top, above average, yellow is average, and red is below average. Yeah. So this document was originally shared with me. I saw this for the first time last Thursday, I think. Yeah, last Thursday. And so based on the folks I met with reviewing this document with me, there were some areas that seemed to be higher need for attention than others. And that's where the scope and pricing, the second document linked in the agenda, come in. She just literally sent this to me at like 4:45 this afternoon. Too many tabs open.
So this is a one-time funding for these projects.
Correct. And so one of the things that she is investigating, for example, is if you scroll down to the row that is for the gym. Apparently, the colors for that, it didn't separate well on this PDF that she sent me, but the floor is in poor shape. So the floor of the gym rated as a red. But one of the things we talked about was, well, gyms are in schools and gym floors are going to need to be maintained. Shouldn't there be a pot of money somewhere for maintenance of a gym floor so that we don't have to spend this special money to refinish our gym floor? So she's investigating that. Yeah, and my plan is I don't want, like, the last thing I want is for us to come up with classrooms that all look the same. I think it's really important that classrooms, you know, kind of have their own feel and their own personality. And that's where, you know, trying to figure out what, you know, what makes sense, what we have money for. I mean, we don't have enough money to buy, with this $100,000, we don't have enough money to get every classroom new flex furniture. So are there particular classrooms that are in more need of furniture? One of the things that the report says is that like in the classrooms, I think it's the paint. You know, walls are tiled and there's concerns that there might be some of that asbestos in the tiles, and that the paint is just old. You know, but maybe that's not a priority to refresh the space. Another part of the conversation we had is that there were a lot of concerns when they came through in terms of the main office. You know, has it been updated? There's flooring that they suspect might have asbestos in the adhesive on the tiles. There's old furniture. But my preference was to spend money that's going to benefit kids. Like, we can make the office work. I'm not too concerned about the office. I'd rather spend the money on things that are going to be directly benefiting the students consistently. And so that's one of the reasons, even though you see a lot of red with the office, there's nothing on that pricing sheet around prioritizing the office. One of the things I was very curious about investigating, and some of this is because, you know, with COVID this year, it would be great to have more outdoor classroom space. And just as a Montessori school, I think it would be good to have more outdoor classroom space in general. So that was another thing, that even though they walked in, the playground itself is in good shape. I did ask them to get us some pricing on more outdoor classroom space, and she hasn't received the information. So that's why on that scope and pricing document, you'll see that we're still waiting on information from the vendors. So, Mary, I didn't see you joined us. Welcome there. Here's the document that we're looking at, and I can drop the agenda in for you in just a second. Yeah.
I have a question, Natalie. I had my hand up, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Put it back down.
I'm getting used to that. I forget it's there. I forget to look.
That's okay. That's okay. I know how to self-advocate. So it would seem to me to get the best bang for our buck to kind of create some pricing around some of these things that our people are mentioning are the most important for them. If bookshelves are falling apart, bookshelves are pretty basic to a classroom, right? I personally think that the trend in the future is going to be getting children outside as much as possible. And so any kind of outdoor spaces that we can create to make more available for children, I think is really a good way to spend our money. When I looked at what was there for the art room, I'm delighted that people wrote down kiln. However, a kiln has a special venting situation, and probably the best place for a kiln would be in the solarium. We've looked at this quite a bit, and the solarium is a space that could handle a kiln in a corner, vent straight out, and be able to be used without impacting, the classroom, because there's not really space in the classroom to handle a kiln. But yeah, the outdoor space. And then my other question was, do we have a list of some of the things that monies went into about, what was it, 3 years ago when Katie got a bunch of money and had some of the school painted? There were a lot of colors and things that were done that we didn't particularly like in the end, but some of those things have just been painted just 3 years ago or so. So we could probably take some of that maybe off if that's in the whole thing. I don't have the whole thing memorized, but yeah, but it would seem to me like if we could have a list of of all the things and then see what's the best bang for our buck, what's the most we can get that's going to impact the children. That to me would seem the best way to maybe approach this.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your input. Just before I go to Maggie, I'll come to you in a second. We did talk about the kiln, and that was one of my questions is like, A, is there space in this classroom for the kiln? B, is there, how much money would that cost? And that's one of the reasons you don't see it on the scope and pricing document, is because it was going to be pretty expensive and eat a big chunk out of the budget. And so it's definitely something that can be considered, but there may be other things that we need to address first. So, but I know, Jennifer, you would love to have a kiln. Maggie?
Well, I have two different parts. One question is, I would love the outdoor space. My question is kind of just where would that be? Because I just wonder if we have the ground for that. But just something I'm thinking out loud. The second is there an option? Honestly, I don't know, like Mary Beth's saying, I don't know if we really need to paint the rooms, but would there be an option of like someone coming in and removing all the nails and drywall and, cleaning the barbecue sauce off the walls in the hallway, like the brick in the hallway that's been there for years and years, like a really deep clean? Because I think a lot of this stuff could be managed, or, a lot of the aesthetic stuff would really help if we had some deep cleaning happening.
I don't know. We can certainly investigate that.
Because I wonder if that would just be kind of an option that would be a little less expensive, because we just don't have time to do it, but it would be something that would kind of give us a sharper, neater look. And then, like I have nails, I don't even know how long they've been there, but it's just part of what comes with teaching, right, in classrooms and things like that. So
repairing, not only, not necessarily, well, if you're repairing holes in the wall, you may want to repaint them though, too.
And that's possible too,
because they're getting patched.
Right. And even just like I have shelves that are missing, or like just kind of that kind of stuff, or, maybe putting another electrical outlet in the rooms, because I have one on either far end, but nothing in the center. And that's proven really tricky with COVID, especially because you can't charge their computers, and I don't know, just kind of updating some of the stuff that we need to function a little bit more. Like I can barely store things in my closet because I have one shelf out of the, I think, 5 that are supposed to be there.
And that was definitely something that's referenced in the color-coded report. When you see things in the classroom where it talks about the casework, that's what they're talking about, is like the woodwork and the bookshelves and things like that that need maintenance and repair.
Gotcha. Yeah, that definitely could use some help.
So I'm just going back over the, all right.
This is Mary. With the outdoor space too, because ECE can only utilize so many spaces that they have to be fenced in. If we do something like that, just being mindful of maybe creating another space for ECE that could, or like a fence that would fence another piece of that in. Because we all fight over that. Well, not we all. There's issues over the playground space. So
Yeah.
It would alleviate a little bit of that, I think.
I see your question, Maria. That was one of the things they looked at, is just both the quality of the carpet that is present in the classrooms and the classrooms that need carpeting. And so that definitely is something that could be a consideration. But ultimately, this is really helpful in just time to getting everyone's opinions and thoughts around what we could do to improve the spaces within the building or outside the building. And then obviously I'm going to need to work with the partners to get more information and more specific costs associated with any of these options, so that we can really kind of drill down and identify the priorities that we need to address. And so they are hoping to have all of this resolved by the beginning of March, so that if we do identify anything that's going to require any kind of contractors, they can get their plans in place and then get the construction scheduled for over the summer. So let me see what, I know I've missed a couple more in the chat box. Maggie, when you say you would like tables that don't collapse randomly, are those like student tables or teacher tables, or both?
I have a couple student tables that I've never been able to get other ones that Enrique has fixed, but they'll just literally, the kids will be working and they'll race too hard and one leg will fall out. Like that kind of stuff. It's just really dated things that we've had for a million years. And it's hard to find chairs that are even size appropriate for all the same chairs in my classroom for our kids. Like I have the little ones for the lower L, and I know all classrooms I just think our classrooms all could use some updating and some repairs. And that's where personally, I would love to see it, of course. But
and I think that was why one of the priorities they identified was just the classroom, because what you're describing, it's not safe and it's not inviting. And we want our students to have safe and inviting environments that make them feel welcome and comfortable and are good for their learning.
And I think a big piece of Montessori, especially after this year, I'm realizing, is the kids want places to sit and places to move and work in different areas. And, when you only have tables and these uncomfortable chairs, it's just not really the vibe that we're wanting for Montessori. And something to be said about, that kind of flow.
I agree completely. Hannah, I like your vision with the French doors in the garden space. We'll see, what kind of numbers come up with some of these things and see what's possible. Furniture that matches or that doesn't wobble and isn't going to collapse would be important. So Jennifer, window overhaul is a completely different can of worms, and Enrique and I have been talking about this in conjunction with the cooling chart, because we think it's kind of silly to put a cooling system in Denison when all the cool air is going to go right out the leaky windows. But that's a whole separate, that's a different conversation. But our windows are not great. So, Emma's learning. So you see the chat box. All right, if you guys think of any other ideas or input that you want to share after tonight's meeting around this particular topic, don't hesitate to send me an email or let me know what you're thinking. But this has been really helpful, and I know Mary Beth's busily capturing stuff in the chat box below, or excuse me, in the chat box in the minutes below. So I appreciate that. Any other questions with that before we move to the choice and enrollment prep updates? Go ahead, Cole. I can't hear you, Cole.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I apologize. So I have another meeting at 5:45, but it's really great to hear these things from you guys, because this is something that with FDM, the street team, these are the important things that we don't always know as parents that aren't in the classroom. You have parents that maybe could help us with some of these things if they're not taken care of by this $100,000 or whatever down the line. So when we can return in person, we could think of some of these things for the street team. When it comes to tables and things like that, we could present them to the FDM board and look at our budget either for this year or next year to start to meet some of those needs if they're not going to be covered by this new money. So I think it's great, and I appreciate everything you guys do. I'm sorry that I have to get going.
Well, I'm glad that you were here this evening and appreciate that offer, and we'll definitely keep that in mind. We'll see how far we can stretch this money, and then we'll see what we need to do next. Thank you, Cole. Jennifer, this money needs to, we're trying to get it all spent now. So that's why they're wanting us to identify our priorities. And really that 100,000 is, we're going to use it pretty quick. It's going to be pretty straightforward when you start looking at the cost of furniture or painting or carpeting, or I imagine once we get any quotes around classroom space, or excuse me, outdoor classroom space, it's going to be, hard to figure out what to prioritize in order to spend that money. Oh, you guys love your French doors, huh? Yeah. All right. Did you guys see? I've got my co-pilot down here now, so she's here. I knew it was only going to be a matter of time. So she's been fed, she's been walked. She needs a pet now. Okay. Choice and enrollment updates. In the agenda, I have linked several resources that have been created based on our conversation from last month. And so, sorry, now my dog's deciding she wants to eat my hand since I stopped petting her. It gets distracting. There she goes. So I want to thank both Patricia, who has shared some of the marketing pieces that she's been receiving with me, and then Penny, even though she's not here this evening, she had shared some resources for marketing from other schools with Hannah. Hannah, you're the one who sent those to me, I think. I can't remember. And so using those, and I've also just been kind of trolling some other schools' websites to see what they're doing for promoting their schools. We created these resources that are linked here. And so the next step is finding an audience for these resources. So the next, the virtual information session is going to get posted to Denison's webpage. I'm going to push it out via Facebook and via flyer, and ask people, just, feel free to share it, repost it, put it on a Facebook group for your neighborhood, put it wherever you want to. And then within that virtual information session, it will direct folks to the website to sign up for more question and answer sessions after the first of the year. And then within those question and answer sessions, hopefully get people to list Denison as their school of choice for the next school year. I know that Joan and Hannah had also shared some information with me about a plan to directly market to some child care centers or early Montessori's in the area. Would either one of you want to speak to that? Hannah or Joan?
Go ahead, Joan. I just did the research. Joan did the big work. You're on mute, Joan.
You're muted, Joan.
Hannah and I talked a couple months ago about just, we have so many childcare areas, childcare centers in the area, that if we could figure out a way to maybe market directly to them, that we could maybe build some long-term relationships, that going to Dennis would be just kind of a natural progression for them. So Hannah had, about 6, Hannah, that she knew of. And then I was going to get some information on them and figure out how we can get the information to them, maybe about the virtual tour that Natalie's been putting together. Something maybe with, I can't remember who shared us. I think it was Penny shared the, what Strive is doing as far as, we don't know how to get their email list, but Strive had a really nice, succinct flyer inviting them people to the virtual presentations. I think there were like 3 different dates. So that's kind of what we're looking at, Hannah and I, is how do we get those healthcare centers on board, build those relationships, and get the information directly out to them to share with their clientele.
Thank you, Joan, because that was my question, and what Joan and Hannah shared with me is, for like middle schools, they have a known list of DPS 4th and 5th graders that they're marketing to. When we're trying to find families with 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds, they may not already be in DPS's system. So I'm not sure how we access them via email. But that's why I'm thinking, if we can get some things posted on our Facebook page, people share it, we get word of mouth, we get posted in, surrounding area Facebook pages. I know Penny, I think, was saying last time there's like a Harvey Park Facebook page that could be posted on. There's probably like a Ruby Hill Facebook page, any, Southwest area neighborhood Facebook pages, just to start getting this information out. And then just trying to generate interest in our virtual information, and then our live question and answer sessions scheduled in January and February. And just, hammering away at this.
It'd be interesting to see how Penny's name got on the mailing list for Strive. Or if any of you other parents have had flyers or anything sent to you from other schools, sharing how you got on those mailing lists.
I know Patricia has, because she's forwarded at least 2 or 3. Like, I think she forwarded me a DSFT and a McAuliffe, and I can't remember if she also shared a Strive with me or not. But, I think once you're enrolled in DPS, it's pretty easy to get those, especially at those transition grades. I'm not sure, Brooke, why you guys would be getting those already. You're a little young for that just yet. Yeah. But like I said, if they're already enrolled, it's a little bit easier to get that access to that information. I still don't really know how they do it. I'm not sure for those families not yet in DPS, how we harness that. I've got this school information page that can be downloaded as a PDF. I've got a promotional flyer. What I found with charter schools typically is they're not really very collaborative, because they want the kids for themselves. And so they don't like to share often. Doesn't mean they wouldn't, but I think my first bet would be just to reach out to some other principals that I'm friends with, and see how they've done it. I know, for example, I used to work at CMS Community School, which isn't too far from Denison, and CMS was the only school in the Southwest coming into this year that was projected to have an increased enrollment. And I know that was because the principal had directly worked with Pasquale Ledoux to market his dual language program at CMS, which was appealing to many of the families at Pasquale Ledoux, because they have both English and Spanish classrooms there. And so he got a lot of those families to choose to come to CMS for kindergarten. So it was, a direct effort on his part to partner up with other schools. So that's where I think what Joan and Hannah are talking about is, if we can find out some of the daycares in the area, because, other area DPS, ECE programs aren't really going to want to lose their children to us. So,
Except we do have the Montessori piece that's, totally different from other schools, that maybe that's something, so that we have a whole nother concept that we're pulling kids from. It's not from the same kind of an environment, that maybe that's something that we can go after with. If you can get hold of those email lists there, Natalie, for all the preschool kids currently enrolled in DPS, we'll go after it. Because I think that's unique. And I think, when I saw the average cost in Denver is $20,000 to $25,000 a year for a Montessori education in a private school, that's pretty astounding.
Yeah.
And have a free program of the quality of the program we have.
Well, I can certainly do some networking and some investigating to see what we can do.
Yeah, because there are a lot of kids, I think, transition from a preschool to maybe a different school for kindergarten. So if we had those preschool kids, if we can get those lists, maybe we can go after those parents too, because it is a unique concept that it's only 3 schools that are Montessori schools in DPS.
I think that's another point too, is to reach out to Lincoln and Sandoval and say, we can take waitlist. If we're waitlisted, we can send them your way. Like, I think networking within our own Montessori network is a good place to start, especially with ECE, because Sandoval's usually waitlisted because of the language. And Lincoln only has 2 primary classrooms where we have 6. So I know that we usually have a wait list too, but we move through ours. So I think connecting with our own network is a good idea too.
Thank you, Hannah.
So I just have to share a kind of a funny story with you guys. After our last call, I was really trying to think and brainstorm with myself, like, how do we find kids? And I was thinking, if we can get to the birthing records, then maybe that kind of tells us like kids that were born at a certain age, and then we could kind of plan it. And then I started thinking, well, but then you would want to know how many kids are born, but then live in our area. So then I was about to Google how many young kids live in my area, but then I thought that's probably the wrong Google search to do. But on a serious point, what I was also thinking was, why don't we create some kind of media or link that we do on Facebook that we can send out? It's kind of like a GIF or an image, and then ask our parents to share with their networks, because word of mouth is probably going to be the best advertisement that we have.
Yeah, I agree completely. And that's where any of these resources that are linked, we can post any of these on Facebook. I had hoped to get some pictures, even if they were of kids with masks or what have you, and while we were still in person, and it just didn't happen. So had to draw on some older pictures to include in some of these resources. But I think this is a starting point. And maybe, we can think creatively about how to stand out at those question and answer sessions. One of the things that I'm trying to figure out how we could capture, and I've talked to the upper elementary team a little bit about this, is, when we are able to give tours, our upper elementary, our six years are the ones that lead the tours. And parents really find that extremely powerful because, the kids can recollect when they were in primary and what they learned and what they did. And they can, be very articulate about what they did in lower elementary and then upper elementary. And the kids are really the best selling point. And so, trying to figure out if there's ways to get some upper elementary children to join the question and answer sessions, or something like that. And no, Mary Beth, my husband knows how to do that, but we haven't done it yet. So that's something I can follow up on. I did, after the last meeting, Mary Beth texted me and was like, how can we get our name to show up, related to certain Google searches, and my husband does know how to do that. So I'm going to have to lean on him a little bit for that. I like that idea, Hannah. And even if it's like short little video clips, if they can't attend the live, but something like that would be a really good way to get that student perspective. Other questions, comments, or suggestions around this topic?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many parents, when they want an elementary school, like how many are looking specifically for Montessori. But I know that like the Montessori community in Denver as a whole is growing. Like we have the training center that's less than 5 miles from Denison. The Colorado Montessori Association is really becoming more active. So I don't know if we become a CMA school, like we become affiliated with the Colorado Montessori Association. We work with Mecker and Great Works Training Center. I don't know if that's a way to promote it. I think that's probably for people who are specifically looking for Montessori and not necessarily the general population. But I mean, I think they have a lot of resources. And if we were affiliated with any of those 3 entities, they would have free marketing, I guess. You know, I don't know. Option.
Hannah, I missed the 3. I just got CMA. What were the other 2?
Oh, just Mecker and Great Works, the training center. Just, you know, I don't know how to be affiliated with the training centers, but I know we have teachers who are from Mecker, but then we also, primary has taken a lot of trainings, our workshops and PDs from the training center. And I don't know how to affiliate that, but the community itself is growing. So I don't know how to capitalize on that, but there is something there.
I almost wondered too, I was thinking about the Mecker website, and Laura, she's the new director there. She just started this last year. I wonder if she wouldn't be able to put like, I don't know if there is one or not, but like if there's not a list of like Montessori schools or local or something like that we could have that would connect to it, or I don't know. But I think that's a good start, definitely, Hannah, to connect it to something like that. Yeah, that wasn't really helpful at all, but that was just me thinking out loud.
I think that is helpful though, because even like kind of to Hannah's point, if any of those 3 organizations do provide a directory, like a Montessori directory, and we need to make sure Montessori Denison is included in that, if not featured as, you know, the first public DPS Montessori school.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I think because we're a public school, I think there are a lot of people that think, oh, Montessori, they do whatever they want. I hear that a lot from people when I say I'm a Montessori teacher. And I think that because we are a public Montessori school, we offer something that's more familiar to some parents. And so it feels more like, okay, we're going to make sure they get what they need. But we still get that freedom in the movement and those sort of things. So I think that's something special that not very many schools offer. And we could maybe play up as well, because you're still meeting those state standards, because there are a lot of parents that worry about things like testing and, you know, if they go to middle school or a traditional high school or whatever. So yeah, I would think that we might want to also play that angle a little bit, that it's all meeting school state standards, but they're learning in a different way.
And thank you for including that resource, that PBS documentary with Miss Martha. That's another piece to consider, and how we capitalize on that and the history of Denison and as a public school. Go ahead, Mary Beth.
I'm not trying to get us off topic here, but it would be wonderful if we did establish relationships with places like Mecker. I mean, they have people that need to.
Mary Beth, you're cutting out. You're kind of like beeping like Braille at the moment. I don't know how else
Sorry.
to describe it. Or like, what's it called? Where you tap the Morse code. That's kind of
Yeah.
what it sounded like. Yeah. So, you just moved to a different spot on my screen. There you are. Okay. You want to try one more time, Mary Beth? Establish a partnership with Mecker.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, I'm not trying to get us off topic, but they place people. They need people to do practicum work. And that would just be a wonderful way for us to get like additional support in our classrooms, especially since we no longer qualify for title support for our kids, right? So if I had somebody that story lessons, I could pull a small group and try and do my own reading interventions.
Yeah. No, I think that's another great point. And just really using that relationship to support our students as well as promote our school and promote enrollment at our school.
So how do we do that? Does anyone know about?
Well, Mary and I hosted multiple student teachers from Great Works Training Center last year, right before the pandemic. So I don't know. I think it kind of depends on the willingness of host teachers. I'm not sure for Mecker if it's different, but for Great Works, they asked if teachers were interested in hosting student teachers, and Mary and I think it was just Mary and I, there might have been others, I'm not sure, who took in host teachers. So I don't know if that's the same, Mary Beth, for Mecker.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly because she didn't have an assistant, but I think we just have to ask or just contact them. I could contact them and say, please think of us in the fall for people who need hours. I'm happy to do that if needed.
Yeah, I think just having those relationships and having people who've hosted teachers in training before, express that willingness. Typically, that's how it goes, is just by previous relationships and then how many they're looking for too.
It's too bad we can't host some kind of like coffee and donuts thing.
I would love to be able to host each of you for coffee and donuts together in the same room. Not to mention some potential teachers or guest teachers. I think that's important to think too, just down the road. Montessori teachers are not as prevalent as traditional teachers in terms of just kind of building that pipeline for our school. So I think this could potentially serve multiple needs, right?
Right.
So it's just doing that outreach. So, and Mary Beth's capturing all this in the notes so that I can get busy on this. So.
Well, and feel free to delegate if there's something that general knowledge people can do.
Thank you, Patricia. Well, and I think too, just leveraging, Maggie just finished her training at Mecker. Miss Jana is in the process of completing her training at Mecker. So those kind of things give us opportunity to build relationships, have people not right now come into the school to observe, but just building that sense of we welcome you, we value you, we want you to come here. We want you to be a part of the Denison Montessori community, and knowing that they would then want their teachers or their trainees to learn from us. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just want to see as kind of an outsider, not a Montessori trained person. One of the things that I'm always hearing from people is when I say that it's a public school, they're always amazed at that, right? That it's part of Denver Public Schools. So I think that really opens a lot of doors to where they can send their children later. They're still within a Denver Public School network. So if they want to try to get their child into DSA, if they want to try to get their child to a different high school that's nearby, they're still within that. And I think that that's also a piece that's That's, where does my child go from here? What does my child do? Well, you've got another Montessori option, which is looking pretty good. It seems to be doing well. It's new, but it seems to be progressing. But you also can still, continue to entertain ideas of sending your child to any one of the Denver public schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's helpful information to make sure I'm including in question and answer sessions or promotional materials, what have you. Hannah, I'm not really sure I understood what you put in the chat box.
I just meant there's a little Lyceum, which is right down the road on Sheridan, and they only go to kindergarten, but would we be okay, for enrollment to take in some lower L students, like first graders? So that's just kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, and I think it's closed already, but potentially, and I don't know where their students went, but I think anything that that we can capitalize on. Okay. I think we leave no stone unturned, really. So.
Just one thing. I think too, we have to look at the funding of kids. So certain kids bring different amounts of money. I know that sounds cold, but and correct me if I'm wrong, like the preschool kids at the district wing, and we don't get any money for that. But when they start with K in first grade, we do get money. And with a very few amount of kids, we can, with 20 more kids, we can raise over $100,000 right there. So I know that our goal is always to start children in preschool, but in some cases we may need to start them in lower L, which is not ideal. But we just really have to build capacity at our school, or they'll just keep cutting more dollars from our budget. We've got to really have consistent funding. So I think it's important that we look at not only preschool, but it might be like Hannah's example. If they're aging out of a particular preschool program at kindergarten, then how do we pick that child up for first grade? It's not ideal, but we've really got to build a base.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, next year is going to be interesting, just because we're going to need our numbers, and we are probably going to have an opportunity to add children at levels other than primary, and so it's going to be important that we do that, honestly, just to make sure, because we don't have room left to cut anything, honestly. So. And that's a separate conversation. And that's when, we know that after tonight's meeting coming into January, the budget season is coming. And so who knows what budget season is going to bring this year. But, we will probably need to have more meetings in January and into February to work through some of these issues, as well as getting more accurate information about the school determined funds, and then moving into budgeting. So stay tuned for information about meetings coming up in the new year. I would like to, if we could, see if there's any other business that was not added officially on the agenda that we would like to discuss this evening before we consider adjourning.
I have one more thing to add.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, no, I forgot it because I was as far as no, I lost it. I'm sorry. I was bouncing around and I saw something else. Those things that you put on the bottom of our agenda, are we supposed to be sharing those?
Which, the information page and the virtual information session, yes, and the Montessori? Yes. I'm gonna push those out tomorrow via the website flyer and then Facebook, and then feel free to start sharing them.
Okay, I remember now. It was updating our website. And last time I was on there, I think there were teachers there that don't even work at Denison.
So I spent some time last week learning how to work WordPress. And
yeah, so I haven't been there in the last week. Okay.
Yeah. No, I noticed that same thing. And so There have been some updates. It's still nowhere near what I think it could potentially be, but it does have current staff members. It has links to current CSC. You know, it's basics are updated right now. So it still has a lot of room for improvement, but thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, it's a work in progress. Any other topics or concerns before we adjourn?
8 days, parents and teachers.
I don't know who's counting besides Mary Beth.
I just have a question for you, Natalie.
Mhm.
Is there any way that we cannot go back for a week and then be sent home again? Like, is there any way as a school we can say, like, that was really damaging to my students. And I just was kind of curious, like, what do we have any leeway like, because we all kind of knew that was coming, and they sent us back for a week, and then kids were just crying in tears, and I haven't seen some of them since then. And I just didn't know, how can we not do that again?
I've been sharing that feedback anytime that DPS's senior leadership has reached out for any feedback. I have shared specifically how damaging I thought it was to have our upper elementary students in person for 7 days and then only to be sent back home again. And that the fact that there were kids in tears, and that's been part of my concern all along. Kind of goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about the consistency and stability for kids. We know that in person is better for kids. There's like absolutely no doubt about that. At the same time, every family has the opportunity to make the choice about whether they want to take the risks associated with being in person. But this back and forth is not healthy. So I've shared that feedback any opportunity that I get. And I think that's why they're trying to give folks a timeline, while saying if health conditions don't exist or don't cooperate, we're going to have to push that timeline, because I don't want to see them bring them back and send them out again, because it's really hard on the kids. And I saw Jennifer said in the chat box, do we have the autonomy to make the decision not to return for such a short time? We do not. DPS has been extremely clear that schools are not making individual decisions about this. This is a decision that's made at the district level.
It just, even the going on back online for a week and then going back to school feels really, I don't know, just disjointed to me. And who knows, maybe that won't be the case, as we all know, right? But it's hard too, as a teacher, to plan an entire curriculum thinking you're going back, and then, it's just,
And that's the nature of the pandemic right now.
Right. It's the kids just need, that really took a toll on a lot of my kids. I have seen so little work from so many of them, because they just were so excited to be back with their friends. And then they're like, I'm over this. And I don't really blame them.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of over it too. It's terrible. And I know that. I just was curious if there's any way to know. But I appreciate that you voiced that, because that was really damaging for all.
I remember seeing the upper L kids leave that last Friday. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, they were not pleased, for sure.
Mary Beth, thank you for waiting. I see your little hand up.
Oh no, my hand was up a while ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. It just didn't go away. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. My
I was trying to be on top
too
of
much
the hand raising. Let me see if I can read the rest of that statement. Yeah, I'm not optimistic, but it's been really strange working from home again this week. This is the first time I've been working from home consecutively, really since early August, late July, early August. But it's very strange to be in the building working when there are no children in the building. It's just weird. So, yeah.
So Natalie, can I ask one question?
Mhm.
So as of now, we are all ready to be back at school on the 11th, right?
Remote learning that first week back, and then targeting an in-person return on the 11th if health conditions permit. Correct.
When has the district said we will make a decision about this on the 11th?
Oh, I
Okay.
think they would plan to make it that first week that we're back. So they would know, so that we don't get into that situation where we're bringing them back for 5 days because we're holding to this deadline. That's kind of like the
Yeah,
last
that's what I
time.
was at. Okay.
I'm holding to this deadline because we said it. I'm hoping they've learned from that and will say we're going to push it back another 2 weeks or what have you. Not bring it in a week and push and hope the numbers get better, only to see them stay the same and send everyone home again.
So potentially, could they let us know, like, January 2nd, Denver Public?
I think from what I understood from the meeting I was in last night is that
Schools.
they are going to try to respect people having time off during the break. And so that's why they're announcing it the way they're announcing it. So I don't know, if they'll start before January 4th.
Okay. Because I have kids predicting crazy dates.
Well, someone's going to predict a crazy date and get it right,
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Well, I see now they're also tech savvy. They all come to me with this information and I'm like, I don't know, did they Google that somewhere and I didn't read it?
Yeah. Well, I got an email, all the emails came after 4 today, saying that it was going to be communicated to staff and then communicated to families tonight about the timeline I shared at the very beginning of our meeting. So that should be coming out officially from DPS tonight. All right, folks. Well, if we're winding down and we're good to wrap up for this evening, I motion that we adjourn for the 2020 calendar year. Yeah, I see a thumbs up from Miss Maggie there, a thumbs up from Thomas, a goodbye from Jennifer, thumbs up from all of you guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate having you guys as part of our committee. Good to see you all. If I don't see you again, enjoy the holidays, whichever holidays you celebrate. Enjoy the time off with your families. Even though you may not see as many of your extended family as you typically might. I know I won't. But take care of yourselves, be well, and stay in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Natalie, are you going to proofread these or should I go back over them?
I'll reread them. I won't do anything
Okay.
with them until tomorrow.
There were some times where people were cutting in and out because my internet was sort of